Have you ever been in the woods, enjoying nature, breathing in the crisp air? Maybe you smell some eucalyptus, listening to the sounds around you, when all of a sudden the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you realize you're not alone. Not me, because I've watched too many movies, but our guest today, Kev LeStarge, has a lot of experience with this. He is a Bigfoot enthusiast and also the author of a really cute and fun children's book, Billy Finds Bigfoot. And today we talk about his expeditions. I learn a lot about Sasquatch and the community and cryptids and all kinds of really cool stuff. So, whether you are a total skeptic or open to the question, what if? Today is a lot of fun and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, let's go. Kev, thanks so much for being here today. I'm super excited about our conversation. And let's start at the beginning. Do you remember the first time you heard about Bigfoot and what was that?
Yeah. So the first time was probably when I initially saw Harry and the Hendersons,
Yeah.
like many of us. But it was really around 1995 when the internet was just getting going. And the very first website I went on was the BFRO website, which is the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. That's led by Matt Moneymaker. You might know that name from the Finding Bigfoot series. So that website has played a very large, portion of my life into why I'm interested in this topic.
Very cool. And I want to make sure that I'm getting my terms correctly. Is Bigfoot and Sasquatch, is that interchangeable or is that
Yep,
different? Okay, cool.
I would say they're the same. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different. I would say there's perhaps nuances as you travel around the country, which is a large part of what the show talked about and did. You might have like the Kentucky wood booger. You might have the skunk ape out in the Everglades.
Hmm.
So you might have heard of these kind of synonyms for Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Even the Yeti or the Urine around the world. So it's my kind of belief is that they're all closely related, if not the same, at least in the States.
Yeah, at least cousins, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Sasquatch on TikTok, like very big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what I love about Sasquatch, and my wife came up to me and I was like, wait, you said what? Um, and so is just the how Bigfoot plays into our culture
Yeah.
and pop culture. And I think that there's even like Sasquatch is actually going to be like touring or is already touring and is like a thing to go and see. And like it's kind of a festival of sort or like at least a concert of sorts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm all for that person doing what they do. And then they're actually a fantastic player. So
Yeah. So for people who don't know what we're talking about, there is someone, I'm assuming it's a person dressing up as Sasquatch. It might
that's
be
right.
Sasquatch. I don't really know. But they
I don't
play the
know.
saxophone. So they're Sasquatch and they're really good saxophonists, like really, really good.
Yep.
Um, and does Bigfoot, Sasquatch, does that fall into the category of a cryptid or no? And what is a cryptid, I guess, for people
Think
who are
a
listening?
cryptid, for those who don't know, is basically an undiscovered species, or at least a hybrid of a species,
Mhm.
perhaps. I think every state has their own cryptids. Um, for me, I would say that I think Sasquatch is more factual than a cryptid.
Mhm.
But at this point in time, where science has it, is still a cryptid.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then what is it about Bigfoot that has captured your imagination and your interest really over all of these years?
Great question. I think that, I mean, it's on one hand, I was very young. I loved horror movies. I loved monsters. My favorite monster of like the universal monsters is the Wolfman. Um, Somewhat looks obviously closely related to a Sasquatch, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think it really comes down to just there's kind of a romantic side of Bigfoot.
Mhm.
And hear me out. Here's where the Sasquatch starts playing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love
Um,
it.
So what I mean by that is Sasquatch is completely avoid of all human contact. There's many out there who believe that it doesn't want to be contacted, or obviously wants to be left alone. It's in the woods. It's doing its thing. It's able to survive off the land. And I think what we find as humans is like, I think there's a excuse me. I think there's like a longing for that I would say most people, or some people at least, might have. And this spawns up certain uh, shows like Alone and things like that, and like the Survivor or Survivor Man or Survivor, all those types of shows.
Yeah.
I would say that to me, it's mostly the fact that there is this creature out there, very, um, again, hard pressed by science or scientists or like the science community to really embrace. Um, and that is just, it's yet another thing in this world that's yet undiscovered.
Yeah.
um, and that frankly anyone can kind of go to their local forest or woods and potentially have an experience, give or take the size of those forests or woods.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, like in this age where it feels like there is so much that we know about, right? Like there's so much that's discovered.
Yep.
There is something really romantic about that of like this idea, and I'll ask about this in just a second, so I'm using the right language, but that this idea of Bigfoot has continued on for generations and amongst history, right? And we still don't have a definitive definition, or, we don't have Sasquatch, in our backyards, so to speak, right? And that's exciting. There's not much in the world like that. It's really exciting. I think
Yeah.
about it almost like ocean exploration. Like, I don't know, a couple years ago, I think it was Australian scientists sent down a camera further than they had
Yeah.
ever sent down before, and it
Yep.
was kind of horrifying, but super exciting what they found. Like,
That's
it's
right.
really cool.
That was so it actually takes me back to a story of when I was in high school. I'll never forget it, but there was a high school teacher who wanted us to basically write a paper about an animal, or some type of sea creature or something like that we wanted to write like a report on, like a biology report.
Hmm.
What I wanted to do is obviously Bigfoot, and he goes, well, that doesn't exist,
Hmm.
so you're going to have to pick something else. And so then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll do Architeuthis, which is that's the large squid that's captured many of sailors' nightmares, where it's this large squid type creature. I think what you're referring to is that squid, where it was this actually like 60-foot, whatever it might be. I forgot the exact number, but they saw it. They have it on camera, and it
Yeah.
floated by. And it's like there's so many things, whether, and we can get into this realm a
Yeah.
little bit later if you'd like, but so many things, whether it's normal or paranormal, or just things that we don't quite know about our Earth yet. And it's all a learning opportunity, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, did anyone think that we would be talking about I think the Pentagon this summer being casually like, yeah, aliens exist. They're in the ocean. It was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's
Like,
right. Yeah,
we just
there's
like glazed over that. They're like, oh yeah, that's fine.
there's four different types. It's no big
It's
deal. Yeah,
cool. They've been here forever,
that's
whatever.
right.
Moving on.
Oh,
So I guess if people are listening and are a little like skeptical or think this is funny, I always feel like be open to the possibility. The universe is huge and our Earth is just one part of it. But
right.
like there's so much on Earth we don't know. And like you said, having experience in the vastness of the wilderness, I mean, there is kind of a high probability there's a lot out there we don't know about yet.
Yeah,
And if we can't capitalize it, right? If we can't monetize it, people aren't really going to research it that much, to be
right.
honest. So,
Yeah. I,
I, and like, can you talk a little bit about? Sorry, I just cut you off.
no, 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 not at
Oh,
all.
okay. Can you talk a little bit about like what the science, how the scientific community approaches Bigfoot, and what the sort of Bigfoot community, like, what is agreed upon and what is not agreed upon, I guess.
So there are a couple of names that I will throw out, like John Bindernagel. I think he was actually a professor from Madison. He's written a couple books, and then of course Jeff Meldrum, or Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum. He is a very, I mean, if you have a bingo buzzword cards, you just fill two spots. So um, they, as far as a scientific community, so Dr. Meldrum is actually out of Idaho. He has done a lot of research specifically around um, the, the footprints, if you will, or like the foot and the locomotion of the foot. That is kind of his claim to fame, is that you, at some point, you cannot fake a footprint because, number one, could be potential dermal ridges, which are the little lines in your fingertips, so it gives you your specific identification, right? And the locomotion of it, and there's this part of the foot called the mid-tarsal break, which, when we don't necessarily have it, but this creature has it, so that when he actually lifts up, or when he plants his full foot on the ground, he can actually lift up his heel first, and then the rest of his foot follows. So that's something that he has really dug into. I would also, would really highly mention his book and suggest his book, which is called Sasquatch Legend Meets Science. So this really explores a phenomenon of Sasquatch through a blend of folklore and scientific theory. So Dr. Meldrum actually investigates the physical evidence, such as the footprints, hair samples, all while examining like some cultural narratives surrounding the creature. And ultimately, the book really does bridge the gap between the skepticism and belief, and it really invites the reader to kind of reconsider some of those boundaries of science and myth.
Hmm.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so you have gone on expeditions and adventures around this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
100%. So I, way back when, maybe by about this time, 10, 15 years ago, as Finding Bigfoot was coming out and the BFRO was opening up, or I think it had for a long time, it actually has open expeditions. I even think they have them now. Um, anyone can, it's kind of a pay to play situation, but you can go, you can meet up with other like minded Bigfoot enthusiasts or just skeptics, whatever you might be, and go in the woods for, I think it's like a 3 days, 2 nights, or 3 days, 3 nights, something like that. My first experience with all of this was actually in New Mexico, Los Alamos area. And so this is where I ended up having an experience with a family member. I brought them with.
Hmm.
And so the first night we're all kind of huddled around a campfire, and people are talking about, what's going to go on the weekend, who can you contact. There's kind of like these leaders around, you're meeting people. It's a great social event. You're out in
Yeah.
the woods, you're, bringing your own libations, right, type of situation. So it's great. Immediately you kind of start to sense that, like, the creepiness, right, or what some refer to as like real squatchy
Uh-huh.
feeling. So the first night was okay. I believe we did hear some footsteps, very lumberous walking, um, definitely bipedal again, if you have your bingo card. So that was the first night. But the second night, Megan, is where really I became more of, instead of a believer, more of a knower, in the sense that it was at night. I think this was probably past midnight, full moon. I would suggest a full moon. They can see you better, I think, with a full moon. You can obviously see better with a full moon. But we tried a tactic where we were kind of walking in the shadows of these pines and stopping every 30 feet or so and just kind of listening. Well, we get to this one area where there was kind of like a hill that went up into the mountains even further back. But as we were stopping, one little pebble trickled down, and it just was so still. I mean, it was so still on this mountain range, you could actually hear your pulse beating in your ears. That's how quiet it was, almost like an anechoic chamber. I mean, it was so quiet to be outside.
Wow.
Um, we acknowledged it and, like, okay, yeah, something trickled down, and we continued. And as we maybe took another 20 steps or so, this is where we experienced a very deep guttural growl, to where it certainly wasn't a bear or a bobcat or a wolf, or this was a deep. deep growl to where it actually like you could feel your shirt kind of tremble on your chest. Like I
Hmm.
specifically remember that. It was like someone had the bass
The
way
bass,
up.
yeah.
So there were three of us. We all looked at each other. We discussed what we should do, because before we had split off, we were a group of five. We split off into three, and then these two other fellas went a different way. So one of the leaders that split off, his name was Bill, and I think this guy was he was like 6'8", 6'9". I mean, he was a tall fella.
Yeah, big guy.
So we radioed, like we said, okay, we're going to step back because we don't know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I don't even think any of us did have bear spray on, or we were not armed at all, let alone not even having any night vision or anything. Like we were pretty naive and just going at it,
Like
right?
old school going out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just have your experience, right? Not very scientific, I would say, but hey, we go back to we finally kind of meet a point where I can radio into Bill and said, hey, we just had to grow. I was okay, well, meet us here. We're going around here, find this path, you'll see a sign. And as we're talking and as we're trying to follow this path, I say, oh, I think I see you. Is your red light on your helmet, or on his like head or something? And he says, no, we're in the dark. Like there's no way you could have reached us already. And no, I do not have my red light on. Well, fast forward just a little bit, as we kind of retraced our steps the day after, that red light was in the middle of a tree line,
Mm.
and no way would have been a person. So, and this color was a very amberish ball like object. So I would have to say at that point, I did see an orb. I think that many, many, many people have experienced orbs. Now, what I always kind of tend to say is that orbs doesn't necessarily mean that there's Bigfoot or that there's any correlation to a Bigfoot. Um, so we met up with them. We circled back, and I'm still in the back of my mind thinking, okay, we got growled at. I think I saw some type of an orb. Things are happening tonight. We finally go back to where we got growled. We were growled at. We continued down. There was actually a clearing and almost like a meadow. Um, we decided to continue forward and go past them, go through the meadow. This is where Bill says, okay, guys, I got to stop you, and I just have to tell you something. I'm like, okay, here we go. Right. And he says, if we get bluff charged, just like a gorilla might do, just sit down and don't look at it in the face. And I'm like, okay. And I had to take a beat and said,
Yeah.
one, you're telling me something that if something, 7 foot actual Bigfoot creature comes running out of this forest, that we're supposed to just calmly sit down, acknowledge the fact that this exists, acknowledge the fact that, even if we were to try to run, it could break us in
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
So just sit down and don't look at it.
Hmm.
Okay, sure. What else can you say? Um, that's something that they don't quite tell you before you join one of these expeditions. So we all said yes, gave a verbal agreement, continued. Once we got to this other tree line, this is where Bill took out like this, basically like a wood block, and gave a real hard hit. And we knew he was going to do it. And nothing happened. As soon as we continued to go into this forest line, you hear this big crack of a tree getting pushed down with force, and just kind of this leaves rustling, and just everything was going off. At the same time, as soon as that crack happened and the leaves started to kind of shimmer against other leaves, there was a massive, like 30 cow, like mountain cattle range thing that was happening, that spooked the cattle that was in these woods that we did not know about. All came running out of the woods down the meadow, and we're all looking around. And I'll be super vulnerable at this point. And like, I reached back for my dad, who was
Oh,
with me,
yeah.
and I was like, I don't know if this is it, but this is a lot. This is a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Um, the cattle came running out of there, and after that settled, again we heard this lumberous crunch, 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 and it just kind of disappeared past the mountain. We did go back there the next day. We believe we found the tree break, which was, again, was maybe about a 4-inch diameter tree, which is not nothing.
Hmm.
Um, and that was the first experience. And ever since then, it was like, okay, something is up here. Something cracked this tree. The fact that this cattle could be here and it's with the cattle and it didn't spook the cattle means that this cattle knows that this thing is around. And I don't know if it uses the cattle for protection or heat
Mm.
or whatever, or a simple snack. Like as soon as one of you twists a hoof, like I'm going to grab you. Like who knows? But that was the first ever experience.
Wow. And so I have never heard the orb part of it. Can you explain the what the orb is and what it maybe signifies? I've only heard it in terms of like ghosts, you know.
Yeah, it's simply just a ball of light that's perhaps in the woods. There are a few cases where people will see orbs and experience Bigfoot. And this really gets into a discussion of camps, if you will, where there's kind of the flesh and blood camp where this is just a animal like a gorilla like us,
Hmm.
or you get into like the woo camp and this is now more paranormal,
Hmm.
that the orb can shift into a Bigfoot, the Bigfoot can shift into an orb, and oh, guess what? They're all related to aliens. Like something along those lines kind of goes into the woo camp.
So Bigfoot lives in the ocean, is what you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes. Like
exactly.
rides Loch Ness monster for fun type of scenario. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Wow, that's like an amazing story. And through these expeditions that you've been on, like what have you learned about yourself? Because I mean, that seems like a pretty, I would be really scared. Like it seems like a pretty harrowing experience. Like you're going in knowing you're looking for a specific being, you know, in this case, Bigfoot. Like, what have you learned about yourself through this process? And I'll just let you answer.
Yeah. I am torn between actually experiencing a Bigfoot, to
Hmm.
be super honest.
Hmm.
As much as I love going out in the woods and I know why I'm there, I don't know what I'm dealing with. I don't think anybody to a certain degree knows what they're dealing with or knows the has any expectations of, if you do come across a Bigfoot, what's going to happen. Now, you will hear, frankly, 10 out of 10 times, you'll see it, it'll see you, and it'll just turn and walk away. That's it. Um, but I think what presses me the most, and this was again where we were out in Oregon on another expedition, and I immediately had this sense that we were kind of in this like den for whatever reason. I felt like, oh, I feel like we are in like the home at this point. And this barred owl went off, but it sounded like R2D2,
Yeah.
like like just
Yeah.
crazy. I was like, what? And it was loud.
Yeah.
And again, I reached back for a family member. I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, right.
Yep.
So um I think it was at that point where I realized, okay, I don't know what we're dealing with. And later on that night, we actually had on audio captured um, something up in a tree blowing raspberries.
Hmm.
And my belief was that there was a baby Bigfoot up in this tree blowing raspberries. There was a woman with us who, was kind of talking a very, baby-like voice, had little baby toys, just so happened, right? And a lot of things added up to where it was like, oh, okay, that noise to me was, yeah, sure. The person, the expert that we were there with said it was a barred owl. But then I'm like, yeah, but then there's all these instances where a Bigfoot can potentially mock the sound of like a wolf or an owl.
Mhm.
Like, how do we know that it was a barred owl? Like, could it be mocking, right? Um, but we have those raspberries or being blown
Mhm.
on audio recording, and but nothing happened. But it was
Yeah.
just so serendipitous that I've had that feeling of, boy, I felt like we just walked through like the daycare, if you will, or the night care.
Yeah.
That was the alarm. So all that to say, Megan, it just kind of made me realize, damn, I don't know if I want to meet a really upset mama Bigfoot because we
Yeah.
are literally circled around this tree, cornering her baby. What happens when you do that to a bear or
Right.
even anything? It's
Right.
going to full on attack.
Yeah.
So that's where it just becomes a little bit dicey as far as like, well, I don't want to ever be physically harmed.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, a lot of the times what you might hear from witnesses who have had experiences is there's actually a bit of more psychological trauma to experiencing something like a Bigfoot, because you now have to live with that knowing society thinks it's kind of a
Mhm.
joke, science thinks it's a joke. I mean, it's really a fine line of like what pick your poison, I guess, is what
Right.
I would say as far as like how how my thought process has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also interesting too what you were saying about you felt like you were in this den. And um I think in your previous experience you also kind of had like that spidey sense, right? Like that we all have. And there is something about humans where you do have that intuition about different things and you can't necessarily exactly pinpoint it, but I think there's a lot of validity to that. Like this may sound really odd, but I was talking with a death doula in one of the podcast episodes, and we were talking about how like you know when someone has passed, right? Like you know when someone's sleeping and alive or they are dead.
Yeah,
And you can't explain why. You can't, you're like, and I think there's so much about our ability to survive as humans because of that intuition. So it's really fascinating that you were like, huh, I'm in this space, right?
yeah,
And experiencing that. And I think that's what's probably hard for skeptics. It's like, well, I can't, it's sort of that like this is just vibes, but like being able to encapsulate that is difficult, right?
yeah. Well, it's possibly no different than when you're driving in your car and you just get the sense that someone's looking at you.
Hmm.
And before you can think that, oh, someone's looking at me, you just happen to look and someone's
Someone's
already
looking
looking
at
at
you.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. So it's like, it's kind of that type of, I don't know if I'd call it intuition, but it's the sense, right?
yeah,
There's also I mean, again, perhaps getting again more into the woo side of
sure.
things where
Love woo.
it's perhaps the most exciting
Yeah,
is that you Bigfoot could potentially invoke feelings, invoke thoughts, or provoke some thoughts into you. And ultimately, there are some who think that they can speak to a Bigfoot and who can interpret a Bigfoot, and or sometimes a Bigfoot can actually zap you into potentially having an anxiety attack, or panic attack, or you just simply freeze, right? And you can't move, that type of feeling. These are the stories that totally give me pause. And again, question why I love this topic so much, and the idea of like going out there in the woods, right?
yeah,
So it's, I think, to go back to like the sense or the feeling that you get. I mean, it could be your own biological alarms going off, or it could be potentially, some I think, is like this Bigfoot sending you signals, right?
interesting.
So, um, just to kind of share a little
Yeah,
bit of that side.
that's interesting. I didn't know about that at all. And what do you think it is about Bigfoot that has captured our imagination? Like, what do you think it says about society, I guess, that like, and we
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit of, there's so much out there that we know about that the unknown is interesting, but I just find it fascinating that, like you said, and I forget the researcher's name at Madison, but
Oh,
taking
yeah.
that,
John
like,
Bennett. Yep.
thank you, like taking that that oral tradition, that cultural tradition, and pairing it with the science. Like, what do you think it is that is getting people like yourself out there and um, looking for something, knowing that there's a lot of people who are like, okay,
Yeah,
they want,
I would say for those who are listening or
yeah,
watching and who are about ready to say, I'm about to skip this podcast because this guy's talking about Bigfoot, I'm not about it, is number one, give it a beat.
yeah,
And number two, understand that hear from other people. There are so many thousands who have had experiences, even uh there's a president who had it, and I cannot believe I'm forgetting his name.
it'll come to you.
Yes, it'll come to me. So ultimately, is that I'm sorry, I have to actually find it
I know. I'm like looking it up. Bigfoot
real quick,
president. Is
real
that?
quick. This is one of those times where we might have to edit.
Oh boy, when you Google Bigfoot plus president, a lot of weird stuff comes up.
Yeah, it's not. I mean,
Interesting.
um,
Oh, there's a YouTube that Bigfoot is looking for President Joe Biden. That's interesting.
okay, Theodore Roosevelt.
There we go. Oh,
Thank
it
you.
had to be Teddy Roosevelt, of
There you go.
course.
Yeah, the woodsman, and I
Yeah,
just could not.
makes
Yeah,
total sense. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for bringing me back on track.
Yeah.
So, um, he has even had experiences, and not necessarily firsthand,
Mhm.
but there's a story where he was with other hunters in the woods, and someone had an experience, and so et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, like, but he writes about it in his book, which is The Wilderness Hunter. So, and that was in like 1894.
Yeah.
Um, so not just that, but then look back at other cultures is what
Yes.
I would also say. I mean, and not just other cultures in North America, other cultures around the entire globe.
Mhm.
One book that I would actually call out as well is the what's the name of that book? That is the Ivan Sanderson actually wrote this. So this is the one where Abominable Snowman legend come to life.
Mhm.
This is really a case of he literally writes about these cryptids, like cryptids and similar cryptids around the world. And he really does a good job of like combining that field research, folklore, firsthand accounts, and it gives it a really good evidence-based backing of a lot of the theories. So
Mhm.
I would say that with those, the listeners, give it a beat,
Yeah.
right? Things might happen, and this is all about just understanding people's experiences. Now,
Mhm.
what I will say is there are some that those where stories go around where they say I saw a Bigfoot. However, he came out of a spaceship and he was handcuffed to a briefcase like the Blues Brothers.
Mm.
I don't know what to make of those stories, Megan. I
Maybe.
can't, I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
One of the four species that we talked about, but I will never discredit someone's story. I can only say I didn't have it. That's exciting for you, or maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but there's so much evidence out there. It's just it's taking science time to kind of get get connected with it, and at the
Yeah.
same time, or at least modern science, perhaps maybe that's not the right great term, but it really does come down to at some point this will be found. But to answer your question, I think getting back to why people even do the searching,
Yeah.
I think it goes back to we love finding the boogeyman. I mean, that's just such a cornerstone in every human, right?
Yeah.
Finding that monster type of thing. I think for those who they might have experienced it one time, and ever since then, I just have to like you. It's called like the Bigfoot bug. Now I
Mm.
am going to devote my entire life to this. Um, or potentially for profit because
Yeah.
there are those who are out there who are willing to pay. I want to say it was like 10,000. The last I read on something like this was like $10,000 for even like 10 seconds of footage.
Wow.
Um, so whether it's trauma or profit. Like there's many reasons why someone could get into this. For me, it's mostly my love of nature
Yeah.
and just the fact that there could be this creature out there that is completely for for a long time escaped, man,
Yeah.
human, and lives, I would hope, happily in the woods, not
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of craziness that I think us as humans have to deal with.
Yeah. Not dealing with humans sounds great sometimes.
You just got to shut that door.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think also to your point, like I love nature and I spend time in nature, but not in the way that I think you would need to in order to have an experience. You know what I mean? So I think so many times we think about like, oh, I've camped out, but like in cabins at national parks. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I'm always around other people and I don't spend extended amounts of time in, that sort of space. So I think
yeah.
sometimes we conflate our experiences, the general experience in nature, to what I I feel like you would actually need to go and do in order to have um more of an experience.
Sometimes, Megan, it's actually very little. I
Yeah.
mean, you could just be
Now, don't
driving a
say
car.
that. Now I'm not going to sleep at night.
I mean, if you're in the Everglades area, I mean, good luck.
Mm,
But
yeah.
you could be driving a car, you could be throwing out trash, and before you get to the dumpster, you see this creature digging in your dumpster.
Yeah.
It could be in your backyard for intensive, some areas. There's a very good story about a family called the Browns in Florida who had had these creatures basically in their backyard. Um,
Knowing
it doesn't
Florida, that
necessarily,
doesn't surprise me.
right?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, anything goes.
It does. You don't necessarily have to go looking for it. Now,
Yeah.
what I will say though is, as far as trying to have the experience, I mean, there are certain hot spots,
Yeah.
Northern California, Oregon, Mount Hood area, Washington, like the Gifford Pinchot area. Um, that to me is kind of like the capital, if you will, of like the Bigfoot area as far as North America goes.
Mhm.
Um, but there's stuff happening on the East Coast.
Yeah.
There's stuff happening even in Illinois, if you can believe it, right? So everywhere, frankly, besides um, Hawaii and I
Mm.
think Rhode Island are the two states that like don't have any type of
I don't
stories.
know why Rhode Island just made me laugh so hard.
Really, it's a
Like
bad rap.
Bigfoot's like, forget it.
It's,
I'm not going.
I checked it out. Sorry, yeah.
I'm good. So also you have written a book. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So after my experiences and my love for finding Bigfoot and just like always being a Bigfoot kind of nut, I set out to write a children's book called Billy Finds Bigfoot, which was just published. I want to say probably about a year ago or so,
Yeah.
maybe 2 years. But um, this is through Hanger One Publishing, and so ultimately, this is again, children's book where it's about a boy named Billy who loves and wants nothing more than to find this white fox. And ultimately, he has a journal. He loves nature. He draws pictures of leaves, rocks, animals that he sees in the forest. But then one day, as he's going to his favorite research spot, he comes across a Bigfoot. And it's basically a story about how Billy is just very of like fun loving spirit, very perhaps overly extroverted to talk to a Bigfoot, right? But he asks questions and he shares and he's vulnerable and he wants to make sure that Bigfoot knows that, hey, I'm trying to find this white fox. I can't find anything, but since you seem to be a forest lover and like maybe you can help me. And Bigfoot says, of course, let me show you this one spot that you might not have looked at.
Mm.
So Bigfoot shows him this one spot in the woods where he can see all the animals and the birds and the ducks and the moose and everything else. Um, and ultimately, he says, "Okay, well, I gotta leave you now, but this is you can take this spot and good luck." Well, Billy finds out that he's like, "Well, I'm bummed." He goes home. Talks to his mom and his dad, and they're tucking him into bed, and they tell him that well, we sorry didn't see the white fox, but did you ever hear the story about Bigfoot? And so they told him the story about Bigfoot and how it's this mythical creature and how it's the most, unique creature in all of the forest. Well, then Billy realizes, oh, I was looking for the white fox, but I met Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The lesson in that is, which I actually think is quite hard even for adults, is to realize what you have in front of you. And that's one of the lessons that I wanted to really share with kids early on, is that the more you can accept and love the ones who are around you and who take care of you and who help you, those are the ones you want to keep around and to make sure you treat them well.
I love that.
Also, making sure that you love nature, take care of it. Don't collect the leaves necessarily, right? Don't collect things. Draw it, take a picture of it, whatever you might have to do. Appreciate it, but leave it in its natural kind of state. Um, those are some of the lessons that I try to share through that.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, really. And I also love, like, from a child's perspective, well, all of us, right? Like, if we don't know to fear something, we don't fear it.
Mhm.
And he was not afraid of Bigfoot. Why would he be? He didn't know about him. Like, just
Right.
some, you know, thing in the woods trying to help him.
Yeah, and in the moment he meets Bigfoot, he's drinking water out of a river, and oh well, I got to talk to this guy because he must know what's going on. He's drinking out of the river. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Bigfoot's
so
like,
that's
don't go to Rhode Island. No.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, good
That's
one.
great. I love that.
Yeah,
And have you had any feedback from kids or parents?
yeah. So children love it.
Yeah.
Not to give it a inflate my ego here,
No,
but
own it.
children
That's
love it.
great.
Yeah, just a little plug, right? Children love
Yeah.
it. So yeah, children love it. Parents, are I think they just appreciate that their children are into reading these
Hmm.
days. Um, I drew all the pictures, I wrote it
Oh,
myself. So really it's just a case of, again, shout out to my publisher Hanger One Publishing to really actually get it out there. It's on Amazon.
cool.
Um, so highly suggested. I would just also want to say that kids reading these days, I was never one for reading
Hmm.
when I was a kid. Growing
Yeah.
up, it was always video games and like what's the fast, flashy things. Like having time to read and actually get out there in nature is also what this story is about. Is like that's I think to me where again some of that romanticism comes in.
Hmm.
Like get the book, but read it outside
Yeah.
maybe, right? And or go for a walk and read the book and then go for a walk and talk about it and talk to your child or maybe your nephew or niece or some young person that it's in your life that you've shared this book with and talk to them about their thoughts on nature, their thoughts on
Hmm.
life, their thoughts on, what does it mean to love perhaps, right? Anything like that. Not to say that the book gets into that, but it's an avenue to start a conversation. And at the end of the day, I think that's why I very much love the Bigfoot topic, is because you mentioned to anybody, even in passing in an airport, which is where some of these conversations have happened. Someone says, "Oh, I'm in Oregon. Yeah, I live in Oregon." I'm like, "Oh, have you been to Mount Hood?"
Yeah.
Yeah, a time or two. Did you hear anything weird, or maybe even smell anything weird? Why would I smell anything weird? Well, just in case. Or oh, actually, there was this one time I thought I smelled this god awful dog wet smell, and I never knew what it was. But like, why do you ask? Well, Bigfoot. You can start to
Yeah.
have this conversation. So it's a bit of a icebreaker.
Yeah. Very cool. And it seems like, in the way that you're talking, and it sounds like the book itself, you have a really deep respect for nature. And has that been something you've had your whole life, or has this interest in these expeditions and this work that you do, has that been deepened because of it?
I love the question. I think I've always had it growing up in Wisconsin.
Hmm.
Um, but I think a part of me always has this city mouse, country mouse
Hmm.
feel, uh, or side of me rather. But like, as much as yes, I love going to a concert in the city. Who wouldn't?
Hmm.
It, there's a pull back to nature and back to being grounded and back to hearing the wind through the leaves or pine needles. Like that to me is something that you just it's so grounding and it lets you know that this place is home.
Hmm.
And this is, at least for the moment, right? And so like it's very comforting. Yeah, to answer the question, I guess in short, it's like, yeah, it's probably deepened it, but at the same time, I'm now aware that there are things that happen in the forest and the woods that these creatures live. It
Hmm.
is their home, and you may or may not also experience an orb. And I don't know what a forest is to that orb.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting how your experience changes. And I was sharing beforehand that I grew up in the Mid-Atlantic and now I'm in Florida. And I used to be really scared of spiders, like super scared of spiders.
And yeah,
And spiders love South Florida. It's like
yeah,
their spot. And what actually kind of shifted it for me was like, I don't know why I didn't think about this before, but I was like, you're on their turf.
sure, yeah,
Like you don't need to be scared of them, but also like chill out a little bit. Like they're probably like, hey, like get out of here, kind
yeah.
of thing.
I
But
mean, it depends how big they are. If they're
yeah,
big enough, I'm like,
yeah.
well, you certainly don't belong here, right?
Yeah,
But
the really big ones, the banana spiders, which are very big and scary, are way up in the trees. So
oh,
we're good.
yeah,
We're good. We're not, in the same place. But it actually really did change my perspective on things. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like we have such a disconnect from nature in our daily lives. And I was
yeah,
like, yeah, that they can build little webs in your front yard. It's okay.
that's
It's
right.
all
Yeah,
good.
that's right. Yeah,
It's all good. And what advice would you give for like either a young explorer or an adult or, someone who wants to connect with their sense of sort of like wonder and adventure and is hearing this and it's like, this sounds really cool, whether it's, you know, searching for Bigfoot or just kind of getting out and exploring. What advice
yeah.
would you get?
Probably find your nearest park, trail, scenic view, anything where you can just go and listen.
Yeah.
And of course, after this podcast, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
then go and listen and take the headphones off
Yeah.
and just give it a beat. Like
Yeah.
listen to the wind, listen to kids playing, listen to like the dog barking that might be very annoying. I think what I've realized is that we are, with Instagram and with everything else that's so digital, it's so fast moving, and and this is why yoga is perhaps fantastic for a lot of folks, is because it gives you that time to breathe and let your body breathe. So you can do that just going into a spot where you find is comfortable, even in your house. Even it doesn't necessarily have to be outside, but just the chance to breathe and like get grounded, wiggle your toes. Someone told me long ago, if you're stressed out, just wiggle your toes,
Yeah.
become grounded, right? um and I don't know if some of your listeners might think that's a little hippy dippy. Just give it a shot.
Yeah. 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 I think anybody
um
who's still listening at this point doesn't think it's hippy dippy, but I also think that like I'll do nature walks with my kids after dinner. And I call them nature walks because it's our neighborhood and we walk it all the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
But I'll say like let's try and see at least one thing that we haven't noticed before. And the
beautiful,
years that we've lived in this
yeah,
neighborhood, we always do.
yeah,
Always. And it's that awareness, that oftentimes we're so distracted, whether we're distracted by our thoughts or
mhm,
like you said, we're distracted by our phones or like fast paced, and just taking a minute and listening
yeah,
and smelling and using all of our senses, which we don't really actively do all the
yeah.
time.
And in that, Megan,
Yeah.
you're becoming more like Bigfoot,
Ah, that's actually the
because
big reveal, Kev.
there you go.
It's me. I'm Bigfoot.
Because
And I hate Rhode
you like
Island.
see how I did that?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, but it's so true, right? Like this being, this relatively solitary being that's living in the land and living in harmony with it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I mean,
yeah.
and I'm sure they have stresses and things like that, right? I would not. There's a movie called, it was like Sasquatch Sunset, something like that. That is not a good representation of Sasquatch. So if
Mhm.
you've seen it, that is not at all what it think we believe it is.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, that's kind of the romanticism side again. Is
Yeah.
just like they live in this state of pure, I would hope, I would imagine, bliss to some degree
Mhm.
because they can hunt if they need to. They can eat when they need to. They can drink when they need to. They can find a partner, perhaps, right? Like,
Mhm.
and um, it all just is. It's a very beautiful thing if you don't get clouded by a lot of others of other things or woo or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And so are there any like in the Sasquatch Bigfoot community, are there any ethical concerns? I don't know if that's the right way to say it, of going out, like you're describing this like beautiful environment and life that Bigfoot potentially has. Like, are there any ethical concerns about like groups going out and trying to document or find or anything like that?
I know I want to say in Texas or somewhere thereabouts. There are groups that are wanting that. This is might be a little bit harsh, but like want to put it on a slab because that is
Mm-hmm.
the only way that science will acknowledge it. I get that. There are stories where a hunter has shot baby Bigfoot before, but then later on, DNA tests come back to say, well, that was actually bear blood on your shoe, not primate or anything like that. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing? There are hunters out there who will pull the trigger. There are people out there who will pull the trigger. There are, again, more of those folks who are looking at this as more of a financial profit.
Mm-hmm.
S- It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't, again, discredit or tell them not to do that because to some degree, it's like, I understand that at some point that might need to happen for science to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would hope not.
Yeah.
And there are enough. Hmm, the one big film piece that has been analyzed and specifically by a person named Bill Munns, who was basically a Hollywood costume designer and did all these things. He actually took the Patterson Gimlin film footage from 1967. So, for those who might not be aware, Patterson Gimlin were kind of this duo. And yes, if you dig into it, they were always wanting to find a Bigfoot and kind of have film Bigfoot. Well, just so happens that they did. And so this is where you get Patty after Patterson um, walking through the woods, does the, look over the shoulder, the very classic Bigfoot image that I think everyone has in their mind. Well, that
Mm-hmm.
comes from that little piece of film footage.
Oh, interesting.
And so at the end of the day, like they were looking for something, they found something, they filmed it. That piece should kind of once and for all lay the groundwork and put everything to rest that says, yeah, this exists.
Mm-hmm.
How many years later we're still debating, even
Right.
though many scientists have come through and says, yeah, or professors even have come through and says,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's more to it than that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it's really up to it's really up to everyone's own discretion. And I would say
Yeah.
that I think what's going to be interesting is the more we do logging or the more we do any more harm to environment type of situations, like these are, I would imagine that we're going to potentially shrink
Mm-hmm.
this habitat of this creatures, these species.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it'll just become more and more a case of like, well, they have to go somewhere. And so we're going to experience some more. And for the listeners, I think one thing to keep note of, it takes a human in an area of where Bigfoots are to see or experience a Bigfoot. So, meaning if you're at home, well, no, you're not going to see a Bigfoot, right? But if you happen to go out in the wilderness or at least somewhere where there's some type of food resource, shelter, water resource, like, yeah, then perhaps, right?
Right.
Um, I don't want to ramble too much, but does
No.
that, okay.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And I'm also sitting here thinking about like we live in this age of conspiracy theories. And I think many times, at least right now, it has gotten into a very dangerous territory, right?
Mm,
And not that Bigfoot is a conspiracy theory, but I'm also thinking like I don't see what the harm is in people believing in this, right? Like, even if it's not real, right? If you're 100% skeptical, don't believe that there's any possibility for this. I'm just trying to think in my head, like, what would be the harm of believing in Bigfoot or,
There is a multi-million, if probably not billions of dollars poured into the lumbering
mhm,
business. And once I want to say that there was a certain species of owl that was discovered that
mhm,
actually ended up blocking off thousands of acres to protect this species from it being lumbered. Um, Now imagine if that was a Bigfoot that had basically escaped science for
mhm.
eons. It was more than a ape. It was, let's just say at this point, less than a man.
Sure.
It's the next missing link. Think of the thousands and thousands of acres that would be then barred, potentially barred off,
Potentially.
depending
Yeah.
upon right government stuff, but like,
Yeah.
which would then hold billions of dollars from those lumber companies
Mhm.
profiting off of that discovery.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory, but that is to me a at least a discussion of topic that says there are only so many of these creatures perhaps out there.
Right.
I think Dr. Meldrum says I think for every like 5,000 black bear or bear, there's only one Bigfoot, right?
Mm.
Something along those lines. My numbers might be off, but that to me is cause for concern and like would cap any type of news outlet from sharing that there was a discovery. And there are theories out there that in fact the military already knows that there are Bigfoots out there.
Mhm.
Um, Especially after the Mount St. Helens eruption, there were actually bodies discovered that the military had to kind of cover up. I mean, again, getting into woo or conspiracy
Yeah.
theory perhaps, but like that is a story that's
Hmm.
told. Um, there's plenty of stories of black ops and helicopters coming in just as someone's had a Bigfoot experience, and it why would that be?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think that there could potentially be some cover up scenarios,
Mhm.
but those are just a couple.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I think that at least for me, like the past 5 years, there's been so many things that haven't been on my bingo card. Like,
Yeah.
who knows, right? Who knows? Okay, so Kev, one of the things that I often ask listeners of this podcast and life in general, and it's a rule that I keep for myself, is like when you hit resistance against an idea or a concept,
Yeah.
lean into it with curiosity, right?
Totally.
And
Yes.
like, do you have any thoughts around that?
I was told one time, and I love, and you know what? I think it was actually Brene Brown who once said, turn worry into wonder.
Mm,
And if you are finding some resistance and or anxiety or whatever it might be, turn those feelings into wonder. Ask questions. Ask those, what do you think about this? Or
mhm.
maybe you might have a family member or a friend who loves the Bigfoot topic and be like, why do you love the Bigfoot topic?
Right.
And again, it just is kind of, it's that icebreaker. It's that because it is, I do have to say that like this topic gets a lot of flack from
Yeah.
people, and you don't always get that warm hug from everyone when you say that you are into this topic. And it's so funny because it's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
It's no different than saying, I'm really into what Africans are calling this ape or ape-like creature, because granted, the ape was only discovered, the gorilla was only discovered, like, I want to say at this point, like 150 years ago. Like, it's not that well known.
Yeah.
Um, and so it starts the conversation, and it starts people knowing that, like, if this is a concern for you, or if it questions your understanding of the world, that's probably a good thing to your point, Megan, because the world is so big, our universe is so big. Like, there's going to be things that you're not going to be comfortable with, but that is a growing opportunity that you can have.
Yeah. I think you hit on so many important parts. And the other thing is to engage in a conversation with someone and to try and gain more understanding doesn't require you to believe it in the end. It doesn't require you to ascribe to that other person's viewpoint, right? But you
Yep.
have taken something in, you've connected with someone else, and you have a deeper understanding of
It,
yourself and the world
yeah.
around you. You know what I mean? Like I
You've taken it in and you didn't have any type of social media source telling you perhaps what to think.
yeah.
You witnessed it or talked about it firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I mean, the first thing I think of, and I was born in the early 80s, is the National Enquirer, right? Like that's always the like thing that I
Yeah.
think of. So when I run into those sorts of like, yeah, okay, whatever, I'm like, wait, where is this framework coming from?
Yeah.
It's literally not coming from anywhere that I've decided. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think being open to the possibility of wonder, being open to the possibility of things that we don't fully understand having validity in this world where so much is about certainty.
Yes.
Um, I
Well,
think
or
it's
yeah, or false facts or things
yes.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a swirl.
it's a swirl.
And yeah.
And you have to think critically. I'm not saying that, but I do
Yeah.
think just the more that we are open to listening and understanding and thinking critically and not just like living more in the gray, I think
Yeah.
is a good thing in
Gray is
general.
gray is good.
Or
I
I shouldn't say gray, all the colors of the world, right? Like, because gray has like a negative connotation. Like
oh,
it's
for sure. I live in the maybe
the maybe. Yeah. I think the
because
maybe's fun, to be
yeah,
honest.
because that's and I actually have tattoos that says
Mhm.
the stars that says yes, no, and then maybe. And in that, number one, following kind of your astrology path, it's like yes, it's all written in the stars. Number one, number two, yeah, it's yes, no, or maybe. Like there's no other answers other than that in life,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like, or if it's a no now, wait a beat, it can turn into a maybe, and then that maybe can actually turn into a yes
Yeah.
on any level, on any topic, or vice
Yeah.
versa. So, um,
And it's
whatever that
interesting. Yeah,
whatever that
like
does for your listener.
yeah, totally. And by the time that listeners listen to this, um, I interviewed a tarot reader, and then I also interviewed a priest who um, m meets souls that are stuck.
Mhm.
Like they reach out to him, he prays for them to get to that sort of next
Sure.
phase, whatever. And I
Open
shouldn't say
to it.
whatever, but it's one of these things where if you're Catholic, you're like, oh yeah, they're in purgatory and they're going to heaven. And when you take a beat back and say, like, well, wait, then why can't tarot exist? And why can't reincarnation exist? And why can't this exist? And this, it's like it's all
Yeah.
about what your structure and worldview has been.
Right.
And again, you don't have to believe in any of it, but I think the world's a much more fun and interesting place when you are curious. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
I
Yeah.
th I think what I'm hearing is a new T-shirt that says "Live in the Maybe,"
I
because
love
that
that.
is a fantastic shirt.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing about it, not to get like too philosophical, but it releases you from the burden of being right. I think so
Yeah.
much in life we're like, no, I'm right. And we shut off from hearing, we are not active listening anymore. It's just
Yeah.
like, I'm waiting for my response. And
Totally.
that's a pretty heavy burden to bear. So,
Well, with the Bigfoot side of things, there are so many of those, and there's so much input into this topic. If you get into like the circles and the swirl of it, where I think if this is where it's so critical that people do their own research. I'm proud of it, and I will wear a badge proudly that says I'm an armchair researcher.
mhm.
So, like, I will read books, I will go online, I will do my own read articles,
Sure.
whatever it might be. You don't necessarily have to go out in the woods to have this experience and then become an expert, because, in fact, if anyone's calling themselves an expert in this field, that's just not. Maybe my advice there would be maybe shy away from that person.
Yeah.
because no one is. No one has no one's that Jane Goodall yet, and who's actually living with these creatures.
Right.
There's some who might say that they do, but they're not doing it perhaps from a scientific method. So,
Yeah.
I love what you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a beat and like embrace as much as you can. Bite size, perhaps.
Yeah, bite-sized pieces. And I agree. The whole expert thing in general, I think, is really, that's a whole other podcast, I think, to talk about.
Happy to join again.
And what do you love most about this relationship that you have with Bigfoot and this journey that you've had?
There are some really good people in this field.
Mm-hmm.
Like any, I would also kind of call it a counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
There are some different people in this field. There's
Mm-hmm.
some just bad people in this field. Like anything. Card
Yeah,
collecting. There's some bad players in card collecting.
of
Let's just say,
course.
right?
Yeah.
I think it goes back to my own personal interest in the subject, my own personal interest in like undiscovered creature,
Mm-hmm.
but then the friends that you can basically meet or people who have interesting stories, and everyone kind of just wants to be heard and share their stories, and that's how you grow a community, and that's, I think, what makes us all human. So I would say that that's the bringing the more human element into this, like
Yeah.
that's kind of what brings me towards all of this. And um then of course like the horror movie side of things, and it all just kind of gets wrapped up into one big like fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what advice would you give to your younger self?
Around Bigfoot,
Yeah.
be careful what you ask for,
Yeah.
because one day you might love this topic so much, but then you grow up, you have a family of your own, and you realize that like you become important, and you can't just go out willy-nilly looking for something that may or may not, be able to snap you like a twig. So don't again, just like the Billy Finds Bigfoot, don't take it for granted. Don't take
Yeah.
it for granted what you have in front of you.
Yeah. That's a great way. That's a really nice full circle moment. And we'll put in the show notes where people can find you. But if you could say it one more time on Instagram and
Yeah.
on your shop.
Pine Shadow Design. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Etsy. There's Bigfoot stuff. There's also some movie stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, all sorts of design things, t-shirts, things like that. But yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. This was a really fun conversation, and I'm not going to take the trash out at night anymore because I was
Yeah.
just worried about raccoons, and I'm like, oh, maybe.
I would be more worried about banana spiders than I would be about Bigfoot, but yeah, all good.
Yeah, yeah. The raccoons around here are pretty fierce, and apparently we also have coyotes, which I was like, freaking Florida. What is this place? It's like wild.
That's not bad. Not bad.
Yeah,
Not
not
bad.
too bad. Yeah. But anyway, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan.
Thanks for listening to Wait, What Do You Do Again? For more information about today's guest, or if you'd like to be on the show, please visit megdeford.com. See you next time.